Not turn my microphone on. Thank you very much, Alex. That's mistake number one. That doesn't bode well. Thanks to everybody for attending the Planning Committee on the 21st of September. I'm Councillor Hugh Molyneux, Chair of the Committee. Alex Hilton is Vice Chair. Please note the committee is being streamed live on YouTube. If you're a member of the public who's registered to speak, you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and will confirm when your time runs out. Then you should finish speaking, or if you're in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone will definitely be muted. For ease, a pack's been prepared which contains the report, plans, presentation slides for each item to ensure everyone can easily follow the agenda. It's available online. After the officers have presented the report and any speakers have made their representations, I'll invite the members of the committee to make comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to do so. And when I invite you to speak, please turn on your microphone. Please turn off your microphone when you finish speaking. And when speaking, can you reference the paragraph page number to enable everyone to follow, please? Apologies, Matthew.
We have apologies from Councillor Harold Heaton, Councillor Tommy Gray with Councillor Adrian Lowe substituting, and Councillor Keefe is unable to attend but will attend via Microsoft Teams.
Thank you. Declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters on the agenda. If you have such an interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. So no interest, no. Item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 12th of July, pages 3 to 6 in your agenda. Somebody move those minutes, please. Thanks, Councillor Bittams. I think it's been seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. With that, planning applications to determined. There are 9 items for us to determine tonight. Plans to be considered will be displayed at the meeting or may be viewed in advance on the website. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for the applications are as follows. The officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order. Objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes, apart from the ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings, and can you all check that your phones are either switched to silent or switched off, please. Thank you. With that, we'll go on to item 3A. Land west of the Owls, Bluestone Lane, Mawdesley, pages 7 to 30 on your addendum, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. That planning permission be granted subject to conditions. I have no registered speakers. Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Members will recall that this application was deferred for a site visit at Planning Committee meeting back in July, and the visit actually took place at the beginning of August. The application site is located in the Greenbelt on Bluestone Lane in Mawdesley and comprises a grass paddock area between the Owls and 3 residential properties located to the west. Members will be aware that the framework and local plan allow for limited infilling in villages. The application site is considered to form part of the functional area of the village of Mawdesley and is itself a modest gap with buildings on either side and falls within a ribbon of development with built-up frontage. The site lies within this frontage and is considered to meet the definition of infill development. As such, the proposal is acceptable in principle. Members should also be aware that a recent appeal decision to grant approval for a dwelling at Mayfield, located to the northeast of the site, confirmed the status of the area as amounting to that of a village and that there is a continual line of development on this side of Bluestone Lane. In consideration of the proposed siting, it's anticipated that a dwelling could be designed that would be harmonious in the context of the street scene and the surrounding development and would not harm the amenity of nearby residential occupiers. There would be no adverse ecological impacts from the proposal, subject to the retention of the hedge and wall, whilst a detailed surface water drainage scheme could be secured via condition. LCC Highway Services have confirmed they have no objections and are of the opinion that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and it is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, on this business of comparing it to another site, which Adele just refers to, I always understood that each application is considered on its merits, and that seems to fly in the face of that. Just because another one was won on appeal doesn't mean that we have to pay any particular attention to that. I understand that. But my main concern, and I asked for a site visit, was about road safety. But before I get to that, can we just note on paragraph 5, the representations that have been made. 7 residents have made issues about highway safety, drainage, out of keeping with the character. Mawdesley Parish Council strongly objects to the planning application and comment that the proposal would be a new dwelling in the green belt. We understand that. And it talks about safety as well. Drainage and flood risk and so on and so forth. And I have to say, Chair, that the pictures that are shown on the site and on the documents here don't give the impression of a site in between 2 hairpin bends. Application site on Bluestone, the sort of elevation, the first one, then you look at that, you'd think that's a nice straight road. The Bluestone Lane one, you'd think that was a nice straight road. And similarly, Bluestone Lane towards the bend. You'd never think that was a site between 2 hairpin bends with visibility very strongly restricted. Somewhat surprisingly, well, no, not to me lately, because some of the comments that come from LCC Highways almost beggar belief. They don't seem to object, and the up-to-date comment that's been circulated tonight say the sight lines proposed by LCC cannot be practically delivered due to parked cars on Bluestone Lane. Well, maybe when the highwayman went to Bluestone Lane, there were no cars parked there. But it just seems to fly in the face of logic, this. We heard things from a government minister lately that people who live in an area ought to have some say in what gets approved and what doesn't get approved. I think this is a wrong recommendation, Chair. I'd like to propose that it be refused on the grounds that are spelled out in there, on the grounds of highway safety, as witnessed by those of us that went on the site visit. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I know this area fairly well. I travel in this area quite a lot, and I don't believe that the highways issue is significant from what I've seen and from what the LCC report has actually said. As Councillor Whittaker said, I've considered this application on its merits alone, and I'm actually quite happy with it. It's an infill plot. It is in the green belt, but it meets the standards, so I'm happy to move opposite recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Boardman.
The plot is set back from the highway. As Councillor Whittaker says, it is directly after a 90-degree bend coming north into the village. That's not so much of my main concern about this. The photographs don't show the fact that the Owls doesn't have any off-street parking at all. Therefore, The majority of the time, and when they took these pictures, I don't know, there is a white transit van and there's a Fiat car parked on the road. So sightlines will be seriously obscured coming out of that entrance. LCC haven't addressed that in their comments, and I don't know why, because practically that will be the issue, access in egress from this site. So sightlines for me are severely restricted. The photographs don't say it, but we've in the position again where we don't have the wherefore to rule against Lancashire County Council's comments. It's a bit disappointing that they didn't go at a time when there was parked vehicles there, but that's what we've got. My other concern is, well, it's not concern actually, it's a note that the previous application that went to appeal that Adele mentioned states that this area of Mawdesley is part of the Mawdesley village, not the settlement area, but the village itself. Mawdesley is a spread out village, as you know. There are conurbations all over the place. Bluestone Lane is a busy main thoroughfare into the village, and I can't argue against the fact that this isn't an infill plot, because it is. So my concerns are highways, access and egress, but I will just hang fire on my comments with regards to.
Councillor France, then Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I did go on the site visit, and yeah, I do have concerns about, I don't know the area that well, but I do have concerns on highway grounds, and I'm prepared to second Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're overemphasising the highway issue here. Yes, 2 cars do. I live in Mawdesley, so I know that road perfectly well. The right-hand bend, you slow down if you've any sense. And the other bend, you slow down equally. There's no problem during the day most of the time, except when cars are parked. But cars get parked in awkward places all over Chorley and the rest of the country. That's a different issue. If there's a danger for parked cars, then perhaps it's time highways looked at that, or others looked at that and tried to restrict the parking on that section of road. It's not, the exit is, there isn't going to be any on the highways parking. They've got parking within the application. It's a better exit from there, because you can see up to the, coming up to the right, to the bend, you can see what's coming there. And if the cars are parked down on the left, it's no different than the rest of us who have to come down that road and wait and take our chance to pass that car that's parked at the Owls. It's a better exit on this application than it is in the diagonally opposite, which has virtually got their entrance almost on the bend itself. So I have no problem in seconding support of this application. Thank you.
Any more comments from anybody? No. I've not got.
Chair, I don't know if Councillor Ribble did say he wanted to speak. I think he just said he wanted to turn the mic on. So I don't know if he's done a message or not. So I don't know if somebody could just check.
No, I'm fine, thank you. I just needed the mic turning on.
Okay, so I'll move to the vote. I have a proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation. I have a proposer and a seconder for refusal. We'll take refusal first on the grounds of highways. Okay, all those in favour of refusal, please show. Councillor Boardman. Councillor Sherwood.
This is voting against.
It's sort of, but it's not coming through. Okay. So, right, there you go. You can, it's just,
Councillor Sherwood, could you place your vote, please?
well,
It's
she's
not-
trying
it's not
to and it
showing.
won't accept. She's trying to vote against. Oh, there you go. Oh, 4, yeah. Right. Right, there you go. So there are 7 against, 4 for, no abstentions. So all those in favour of the officer recommendation now, please show. Oh, hang on, well, let's get rid of that first. There you go.
So members have voted to that the recommendation remains that the outline planning permission be granted subject to conditions.
Okay, thank you. Item 3B, Euxton House, Euxton Lane, pages 31 to 66 in your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. The officer recommendation is for refusal for the reasons listed there. I've got 1 registered speaker, the applicant agent, George Stevenson. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. This application seeks planning permission for the demolition of the existing building on the site and for the erection of 108 dwellings. The proposal comprises both market and affordable dwellings and would provide on-site public open space with a play area. The site is an existing employment use and is occupied by an office building, car parking and landscaped areas. Policy 10 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy seeks to protect such sites, and in this instance it's noted that the site forms part of the Euxton Lane corridor, which is home to a diverse group of high-value occupiers. The 2017 Central Lancashire Employment Study states that stakeholders highlighted the Euxton Lane corridor, along with Buckshaw Village, as a focus for demand for both office and industrial uses. As such, the site is of value as a location for employment development, and a recent market update report also identified evidence of strong demand for employment land and offices in Chorley. In considering the suitability of the site for employment, it is considered that it is so isolated from residential settlements and associated amenities that it's not a suitable housing site and is well suited to employment uses. Furthermore, the site has not been marketed for employment purposes as required by Policy 10, and for these reasons the proposal is considered to be contrary to Policy 10 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy. In relation to other material considerations, Policy 4 of the Core Strategy sets out the minimum housing requirement for the area. As detailed in the committee report, recent planning appeal decisions in the borough have demonstrated that the council does not currently have a 5-year deliverable supply of housing, and Policy 4 of the Core Strategy is therefore out of date and consequently the tilted balance is engaged. However, given that there is a clear evidence of need for employment land and offices in Chorley, and that the location of the application site is within a key location for such purposes, the failure to comply with Policy 10 should attract significant weight in the determination of the planning application and must be given due consideration in the planning balance. With regards to technical matters, the proposed layout and design of the development are considered to be acceptable, following a number of amendments to the scheme. However, due to the surrounding land uses and physical barriers surrounding the site, any development for residential use would not be well integrated, would be isolated and not well linked to surrounding movement patterns, contrary to Policy 17 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy and paragraph 130 of the National Planning Policy Framework. The design of the development itself is such that there would be no amenity impacts on future occupiers from the way in which the development is set out or in relation to noise-sensitive receptors. And whilst there would be no harm to designated heritage assets, highway safety, drainage, ecology and archaeological impacts, it's considered that on balance the loss of the employment land is significant and outweighs the benefits, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Have we got George? Okay.
Good evening, members. My name is George Stevenson and I'm Land Director for Bellway Homes Manchester Division. This planning application was submitted in December 21 and has been the subject of much discussion and negotiation over the past 9 months. Extensive dialogue has been held with the council officers and other statutory consultees and has led to no objections being raised. Moreover, only one local resident objection has been received, clearly indicating that this is not a contentious proposal for the public. We've worked positively with the planning officers during the determination period, resulting in a number of beneficial amendments to the scheme. We have introduced a 1 acre section of public open space to provide a local area of equipped play where there's an identified shortfall in the locality. As well as this, we have introduced a pedestrian crossing refuge on Euxton Lane. The recommendation for refusal, confirmed only last week by Jonathan Node, the Council's Director of Place and Development, came as a total shock to both us and the case officer. On 3 separate occasions in June, July and August 2022, your planning officers confirmed that this planning application would be receiving a recommendation for approval. The Council sought legal advice in order to advise us of this. From a physical and practical point of view, the site is derelict and houses an outdated, visually poor, converted former warehouse that was last used as an office building. The Section 106 agreement for the application is nearly complete. This will secure the delivery of the new open space in the children's play area, provision that is currently lacking for the local wider community. The prepared legal agreement also forgoes the ability to apply vacant building credits. We're offering the full 30%. We've got so close with this planning application. Only last week, on the 13th of September, my planning consultant agreed the planning conditions with the council. If committee were minded to grant consent this evening, we would accept a far shorter timescale on the decision notice to guarantee the delivery of the site. Our proposal for 108 family homes will deliver much needed market and affordable housing on an accessible, sustainably located, derelict brownfield site. It would instantly contribute towards your 5-year housing land supply, so you could use it to offset, applications where there's lots of local support, local opposition. Our proposals are not speculative development that attack open countryside. They're well-configured proposals that comply with local and national planning policy. Our proposal is regeneration. It makes total planning sense, a position that Chorley Council Planning Department sought legal opinion on and had confirmation on only weeks ago. And as such, I respectfully request that the Planning Committee put forward a motion to approve our planning application this evening. And I draw your attention to the final paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to compliment the officers on a very, very good report here. It highlights a lot of things in the area. I, as a local councillor for that, I totally agree with what's been written. One thing I do disagree with is what just been said a couple of minutes ago, that the residents of Euxton aren't bothered about the housing there. Well, I beg to differ on that one. The residents of Euxton are absolutely fed up of houses being built in Euxton. They don't want any more houses. And just to say that only one person object to it beggars belief. I know that the people of Euxton don't want any houses. This is industrial land. It should be it should be kept as industrial land. It's not been used for industrial land because the developers had let it run down. If it was redeveloped as industrial land, as units, it would be a benefit for the area. The whole corridor is industrial, and I move the officer's recommendation for refusal. I'm proud to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Lowe, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a number of observations. I'm not a ward councillor for the area, but obviously a substitute member for this committee. Paragraph 27 of the report on agenda page 34, the application site is in employment use and there's an existing office building on it. It forms part of a corridor of employment uses on Euxton Lane, And following on Councillor G's point, perhaps the only objector is from a nearby resident, which you would expect if it's isolated and not surrounded by houses anyway. Paragraph 28, again on page 34, refers to policy 10, which I think is important and members should give consideration to. That policy states that all existing premises and sites not last used for employment will be protected for employment use. Moving on, Chair, to paragraph page 39 of the report, paragraph 76. In this instance, the site is located along the Euxton Lane corridor, along with Buckshaw Village, and is a focus of high demand for both office and industrial uses. So, in conclusion, Chair, I'm happy to second the officer recommendation to refuse this application because I think housing in that particular locality would be completely out of keeping.
Thank you. Councillor Sherwood, Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report states that it is an existing employment site, so therefore it would be a loss to employment land. The core strategy policy 10 seeks to protect, as Councillor Lowe said, existing premises and sites. It is unsustainable because it's an isolated development, contrary to policy 10 and 17 of the Lancashire core strategy. What hasn't been mentioned up to date is that it is in close proximity to grade 2 listed buildings, and the report shows how changes to the area have had a cumulative effect on the historical site, and at some point that erosion has to stop to preserve heritage assets. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say here, I actually have a lot of confidence in our planning officers to make the correct recommendations here, and I think they have done that. This is a finely balanced argument. There is high demand for employment area in Chorley at the moment, so I agree that this is appropriate to refuse for housing for that reason, and I just feel a little uncomfortable with the applicant stroke agents coming effectively with what I perceive as an attack on our officers. I think that was inappropriate. I'm very confident in their ability and I fully support their recommendations here. Thank you, Chair.
I have voted. I think if you vote with somebody else, it doesn't take. Okay, Liz.
Yeah. Members have voted and it's recommended that planning permission is refused for the following reasons outlined in the report.
Oh dear. We did it together then. No, I've got some. Thanks. Item 3C, the Little Tiger, Abbey Village, pages 67 to 118 with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. The recommendation is planning permission is approved, subject to conditions. And I have two registered speakers, the objector Mike Matulovic. Have I got it right? I know it's difficult because my name confuses people. And the ward councillor, Councillor France. Adele, can you present the report?
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located within the settlement of Abbey Village and comprises a restaurant building and car park and a small area of scrubland to the rear. The restaurant building itself is not listed, although it is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset forming part of the Abbey Village conservation area. There is residential development on all sides of the application site, other than to the north where there is an industrial development. The dwellings to the south and east are bungalows, whilst those to the east are two-storey stone-fronted terraces. The surrounding area has the character of a small industrial village, characterised by sandstone terraces and buildings laid out in a distinctly linear pattern surrounded by open agricultural upland. Full planning permission is sought for the conversion of part of the existing restaurant building into 3 dwellings and for the erection of 6 dwellings on land to the rear, following the demolition of the existing extensions to the restaurant. The scheme has been revised since its original submission, following comments that were received from LCC Highway Services and local residents. The changes include an improved site access arrangement, changes to the proposed materials so the dwellings visible from Bolton Road would be built in stone, and the height of the dwellings has been reduced to be no higher than those on Victoria Terrace. Neighbour objections have been received from a total of 33 individuals, including one from Councillor Margaret France, raising issues including harm to highway safety, residential amenity and the character and appearance of the conservation area. Further details of the objections are provided more fully in the committee report. No objections have been raised by technical consultees, with the Council's ecological advisors, heritage advisor, waste and contaminated land officer, tree officer and United Utilities having recommended conditions and informative notes be attached to the grant of any planning permission. The site is identified as within settlement in the local plan, and members will be aware that policy V2 of the local plan sets out that within such areas that are excluded from the green belt, there is a presumption in favour of appropriate sustainable development. Abbey Village is not specified as an area for growth in the Central Lancashire Core Strategy, falling to be considered as another place. Criterion F of Policy 1 of the Core Strategy identifies that in other places development will be typically small scale and limited to appropriate infilling, conversion of buildings and proposals to meet local need, unless there are exceptional reasons for larger scale redevelopment schemes. A proposal of this type is considered to be small scale and relates to the conversion of an existing building and the development of a car park to create 6 dwellings. The car park is surrounded by existing development on all sides and is therefore considered to be an infill site. The proposal is considered to comply with policies V12 of the Chorley Local Plan and policy 1 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy and is therefore acceptable in principle. Whilst the proposal represents a notable visual change to the site, it is not considered that this represents any significant level of harm or impact to either the character or appearance of the Abbey Village conservation area. External works to the principal elevations of the original restaurant building would be minimal and in the main relate to the removal of damaging later works and a wider rehabilitation of the external fabric of the building. These works are to be welcomed and will likely safeguard an important building in the conservation area. Other issues noted in the committee report can be controlled by planning conditions and the proposal is therefore recommended for approval on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Mike?
Thank you, Chair.
Can you? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for allowing me to speak this evening. I represent around 50 residents of Abbey Village who have attended 2 public meetings on this proposal, all of whom strongly object to this development. And their main objections are as follows. This proposed development lies within the Abbey Village conservation area and is substantially out of character with the dwellings that surround it. The proposed houses are off-the-peg designs, seen on new estates everywhere, and are not visually appropriate in a mill village environment. Centred as they are within the existing properties, their overbearing nature will cause loss of privacy to people enjoying the seclusion of their rear gardens and yards. The conversion of the restaurant into flats takes away one of only 2 businesses that remain in the village offering a social outlet and is much appreciated by local residents. The nearest amenities are in Brinscall, 2 miles away, and this development will only increase local car journeys contrary to the national planning framework. We are not convinced that the proposed footpath and entrance to and from the A675, which is very restricted, is adequate for such a development, and from the last drawing seen does not allow for a continuous footpath contrary to Part 3 of the Disability Discrimination Act 1995. Even if this is addressed, this development will inevitably lead to more cars being parked on the main road through the village, which carries high numbers of vehicles between the M65 and Bolton, and is the only designated HGV route for businesses in Withnell. Presently, the Little Tiger allows their car park to be used by the local football club and Abbey Village School. Without this, there will be excessive congestion and increased danger to pedestrians. Residents still remember the tragic death of a girl who was killed in the village whilst crossing the road between two parked cars. The chances of this happening again can only be increased if this development proceeds. The lack of parking in the village has already been highlighted by your own planners when drawing up the Abbey Village conservation area appraisals and management proposals. And this is the document here. And I quote from it. It says, with little or no parking provision for private cars other than adjacent to the highway, this causes considerable visual blight, noise and disturbance to both residents and visitors alike, and can also be quite hazardous. As I say, the detrimental and dangerous consequences of further development in Abbey Village have been listed by your own planning officer's appraisal. We hope you do not choose to ignore it. Thank you so much for considering our objections and our concerns.
Thank you. Perfectly timed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. I'd just like to draw your attention to paragraph 43, which I found a bit misleading, where you say the former Little Tiger restaurant. I'd just like to tell you that that restaurant is still functional. If you'd like to go and have a curry there tonight, they'd be very willing to serve you. And I think that the implication is that it's already closed and gone, and that is not, in fact, the case. It is a very well-attended restaurant, very a good amenity for the village, and the poor chap who took it on in 2020 had the misfortune to open the restaurant 2 weeks before we all went into the first lockdown in March of 2020. But despite that, he went on to make a successful business and got a TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence in 2021. So it's been a great asset to the village. And as Mike correctly said, if this is to close, then the only other business within Abbey Village is the Hare and Hounds public house at the far south western end. It's sad to see that the heart of Abbey Village has been ripped out, really, from what was a place where there was a post office and there were shops, there was a grocer's, there were sandwich shops, there were people congregating and coming and going. And now it's very much a dormitory town, and aside from the Hare and Hounds, all the businesses will have gone. I don't think these houses are going to be very sustainable insofar as the nearest grocer's shop is a 2.6 mile walk, as I attested myself this morning. I went to test it out. To go backwards and forwards to get a loaf of bread would be 2.6 miles by footpath. It would be at least double that by road. There are no places in the local GP surgery. They've failed to recruit partners to their GP practice. There are places in Abbey Village Primary School, but it's quite normal for residents of Abbey Village to be refused a Chorley High School place and to have to go to Blackburn or to Darwin. The bus service is such that we have a once-an-hour bus to Blackburn and Chorley in the daytime, but if you try and leave Abbey Village by bus of an evening, there's only one route, and that's into Chorley. There's no public transport to Blackburn whatsoever, and there are only 2 buses in the evening. So all these people who live there are going to have cars, and they're going to have to drive to just about everywhere they need to go. And when we're talking about the environment and the clean air and the active transport strategies, this really fails on all counts. So I'd agree with the statement that this Abbey Village is a mill village. It's characterised by small terraced houses. I would have liked to have seen something along those lines, more in keeping, rather than these large houses that are not going to be affordable for our not of kids growing up who want to have houses of their own nearby. The size, scale and design is not in keeping with Bolton Road, which is mill cottages, long terrace roads in straight lines, as you said, whereas these are quite different altogether, and they will definitely have loss of light and privacy to the bungalows alongside. I accept that the height has been reduced. I'm grateful for that, but the people who live on the bungalows of Lilac Grove, Cherry Grove, will see definitely a loss of light and amenity in their gardens. So on that basis, I would suggest to you that, given what Mike has also said about the traffic, the A675 is a very busy road, or the designated HGV route to the quarry and to the local woodyard. There are constant streams of HGVs all day, and I'm not convinced that the additional amount of traffic from the construction vehicles would be safe on that road so close to a primary school. And I would ask you, if you have a mind to pass this application, that you consider the hours of operation in terms of delivery and the construction vehicles to avoid school times, and to have consideration for the peace and quiet of the residential properties nearby. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor France. Over to you, members. Anybody out there? Councillor Marwood.
I'll start off. Thank you, Chair. I've listened to what's been said, and it was interesting. I must admit, I was of the opinion that it wasn't actually a working restaurant, but that's had a slight influence on what I've been thinking. But the character of Abbey Village, of course, is its frontage, of the mill and the stone and so on, and that's good in my opinion. In fact, that they are refurbishing the restaurant into flats. I'm all in favour of existing buildings being used rather than knocking down a new. So that will stay, I think, in keeping with the line. Yes, I'm afraid these days that's what developers do. It's modern housing to a certain extent, and it's the 3 and the 4 bedrooms. I'm struggling to think of a reason not to accept the proposal. Really, it's as I say, it's a developed site. It's a car park that it's a big open space which is not doing, well, won't do anything. It's unfortunate the village has come to think of it as a public car park, but unfortunately, obviously, the gentleman who owns it has decided that the business is not for him, and he's decided to make it residential. So at the moment, I'm reserving judgment, but I'm inclined to support the officer's recommendations. But I'll listen to other members.
From what's been said, it's obviously very important to Abbey Village and the residents, and like many things on tonight's application, I think it's purely speculative. I don't think the applicant has any regard to the residents or to the amenity of people here, and it seems to me that every rural community now is under threat from speculators who want to do this, and as the rural champion, I shall not be supporting this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think a number of reasons. I disagree with highways. Since in the last 5-6 years, we've had an extension to the quarry, 200 tonnes of material coming out of the quarry, movements every week. We have had a drying shed at Fox's Timber, which was supposed to reduce traffic, has in fact increased traffic about tenfold. We've had a child lose a life on this road, and I'm not sure about the access route. I think if members are thinking in terms of approving this application, I think we would have to have a site visit, but at this particular stage, I'm proposing refusal on highway grounds.
By the looks of things, it's hard push not to support the planning officer's recommendation. It is a previously developed site. It is within the settlement area. It is within a village. It's a small scale development. It is infilling. You know, what is there not to like about it? Well, I don't like the house styles, I'm afraid. I do think they're at a jar with the character of the Abbey Village properties there. I don't think they fit in with the conservation area that's there, and I do think they're unsuitable. So at this moment in time, I don't think I'll be supporting the application, Chair.
Councillor Shea or Councillor G?
Thank you, Chair. It would be a loss of a local business, and as we've said on a previous application, that we like to keep our businesses. The design is out of keeping with the conservation area, and yes, there are houses to the rear, the more modern houses, but that straight run through Abbey Village, they are mill properties with mill property characters. It's been pointed out in the report that it's unlikely to be a local developer providing local employment. There's the issue, being into green matters, of I think further reports on the bats. I know they've been mentioned, but I think more they are protected species, and the buildings do indicate that they may call there. So, like that looked into further. But the aesthetics of the design. If you go through Wilton, you go through Brinscoll, Abbey Village, a distinct mill town, feeling cobbled streets and what have you, and it's not in keeping. So, they're my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor G.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's an awkward one, this one. I agree with Councillor Morwood and Councillor Boardman. It's in a development area. It's in a development area. It is infill. The only thing I've got against it, and it's been talked about, is the design of the houses. I think somewhere that's like Abbey Village, I think it's very, very important that the designs are in keeping with the village. And in my opinion, I'm looking at the designs here. They are not, in my opinion, not in keeping. I do appreciate the officer's recommendation. They've done a good job again on it, but I don't know. It's just the design of the housing wouldn't blend in with the concept of what you think Abbey Village would be like. So I'll see what happens. Thank you.
Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I agree on both sides of pretty much everyone who's spoken, in as much that, for example, it is an infill. I don't really have a problem with the exterior of the building because it's stone, and the house next door is brick and cladding. But I do have a problem with its scale. So the actual concept of it looks all right. To me, it seems like they've made the best efforts to make it in keeping, but it's out of scale. Thank you, Chair.
If anything, we're putting a refusal forward. I'd just like to summarise it by saying that I believe it's in conflict with policy BNE 1 of the design criteria of Chorley local plan and section 16 of the National Planning Policy Framework, conserving the enhancement of the historic environment, and the dwellings designed at the rear are not in character in keeping with the conservation area of Abbey Village. Would that do?
Yeah, I missed what you said on the first one, sorry, I didn't pick up what you were saying.
With regards to Rotterdam,
The first reason that you read out.
it conflicts with policy BNE1 design criteria.
Can you clarify why?
The dwellings are out of character with the local conservation area, Abbey Village conservation area.
Can you specify what the character is and why it's out of character?
The contemporary and modern in their design, that will do. Anything else?
No, that's fine. Was it just one reason?
Yes.
Okay.
At the minute.
I'm mindful that there's another proposal on the table. I don't know whether that's been seconded.
Was there a proposal for a site visit?
No, I propose refusal,
You propose
Chair.
refusal, yeah. I thought that. If not, I've just got, sorry.
I recall, Councillor France, when you proposed refusal, you suggested it was on highway grounds.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate, please, and set that out in a reason for me, please?
I think that highway is dangerous. The young child that was killed on the road was actually a school friend of my son. So I think that's dangerous. I think I could not support something on that road where a child's been killed. It was 24 years ago. That still counts for me. I think that's a dangerous road.
Proposed development would have an increased effect on the potential hazards on the road.
If I can assist, I think from what members have said, I think the reasons you're saying is that the increased level of vehicular activity and the comings and goings from the site are going to have an adverse impact on highway safety. Does that reflect what you're saying? Is it the additional comings and goings from the vehicles from the development?
I think the times, because the times will be peak times, I do think parking, as in most villages, parking is a problem. And I do think also that was part of the problem with the accident happened.
What we've got to be clear about is how this development is going to impact on highway safety. I accept from what you're saying there may be a current highway safety issue, but when you're drafting a reason for refusal, that needs to be substantiated. The evidence needs to be based on what harms will come from this development per se, and that's why it's very important to articulate them and to actually say where the conflict is in policy terms.
Difficult one with that one. I do think that the vehicle movements would be, the restaurant is in the evening, the vehicle movements would be at peak times, school times, morning, it would be rush hour morning, it would be school times in the evening because they're obviously residential properties, which is not something that occurs at the moment. So that's the difficulty I have with it. I do think the access difficulty is bad as well. I've looked on the plan and I still think, whilst Lancashire County Highways are okay with it, it is only a thin entrance.
I think what we need to do is to just adjourn for 5 minutes to try and formulate the reasons for refusal, if that's okay. So that's what I plan to do. Okay? Right. So we'll go, yeah. Okay, we'll restart. Councillor Boardman, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, following conversations, I'm going to withdraw my recommendation for refusal, and I'm going to move for a site visit on the grounds that we're going to have a look at the existing site access and with regards to the effects on the existing highway, and we're going to take stock of the existing character of the buildings around the area with regards to the conservation area.
Councillor France.
I'll second Councillor Boardman's request for a site visit.
Okay. So, the decision it's produced for you to make is if we have a site visit to go and see those two issues. Right, can we move to the vote, please? Does anybody else wish to chip in? I don't know. Okay, we'll move to a vote, please. All those in favour of a site visit, please show. Okay. Councillor Whittaker. I missed that up at the bottom, I think, everything. I know, sometimes it doesn't work. Gremlins in the machine.
So members have voted in favour of a site visit.
Okay. Right, move. If anybody's just come for that item and wish to leave, please feel free to do so. What am I on now, D? I think I'll have Abbey Village with me. Yes, we are. Yes, please. Oh, moving on to item 3D. Barracks Farm, Chapel Lane, Hoghton, with an update on your addendum. Adele's presenting this item. The recommendation is planning permissions approved subject to conditions and an Section 106 agreement. I have two registered speakers, an objector, Hilary Hughes, and the agent, Richard Bramley. Adele, can you present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 3 dwellings following the demolition of existing derelict buildings and the conversion of an existing ship-on to form 1 dwelling with access taken from Chapel Lane. Members may recall that the same scheme was granted planning permission by this committee in January 2019, and that this application is therefore essentially a resubmission of that previously approved scheme and has been submitted because it's lapsed given the pandemic. It's not been able to be implemented. The application site comprises former agricultural buildings and a yard and is located in the settlement area of Hoghton between existing dwellings and the Boar's Head Public House, where it is well contained by surrounding development. Within settlement areas, as members are aware, there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development as set out in the framework and the Chorley local plan, and the proposed development would be small scale. The application site is currently in a state of some dereliction and detracts from the character of the area. The conversion of the ship-on would be the most visible element of the scheme, and its retention would be of particular benefit. There would be 3 new build detached dwellings to the rear of the site, which would be faced in render and stone. This would reflect the features of the locality. The density of the development would be low, reflecting the rural nature of the location. It is considered, therefore, that the proposed development would have no unacceptable impact on the character of the area. The proposed new dwellings would be located close to the boundary with 2 Gib Lane. There would be some impact on this property with windows facing towards this dwelling. Rear windows in the proposed dwellings would face towards the front garden and side of this neighbouring dwelling, with some parts of the rear garden visible either at an angle or across a neighbouring field. The relationship between the proposed dwellings and neighbouring properties is, however, considered to be acceptable and would not result in any unacceptable detrimental impact on amenity. The site would be accessed from Chapel Lane through the widening of the existing access, and LCC Highways consider that this would be an acceptable arrangement that would not be harmful to highway safety. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan, and it is recommended for approval subject to a Section 106 agreement and the conditions that are set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Hilary, do you want to speak now, please?
Good evening. My name is Hilary Hughes and I'm a resident of Chapel Lane. My main objections to this development is about the double yellow lines adjacent and opposite the development, therefore losing valuable parking spaces. Chapel Lane already suffers from a parking problem due to walkers who wish to park their cars on the lane where they are proposing to put double yellow lines. This new development will compromise local residents' parking. The development has guaranteed parking to the new site at the expense of the local residents parking their vehicles. There is room to park one car per household where the row of terraced cottages are. Most of our neighbours in my age are over, some are disabled. If we can't park our cars outside our homes or where the double yellow lines are proposed to go, we would have a long walk after parking our cars further down the lane. I'm also concerned about the people who will be visiting this new development. Where are they going to park? I would like you to consider issuing residents-only parking outside the row of terraced cottages so that we can at least park our own cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Where am I up to? Richard, please. You want to?
Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. We are really sorry to have brought this back to you. The applicants and ourselves had every intention of getting this done, but COVID did foul us up. And by the time we got round to it, we just couldn't get the other people who are required to discharge the previous conditions, all of which are perfectly legit, to pay attention in time. Can I just confirm that later than this, we had a subsequent planning application by the same applicant to convert what was the original farmhouse, which was shown in those pictures, into 2 dwellings. I am instructed to go ahead to get that done, actually to implement that now, and we have applied and obtained a Natural England bat licence to do it. So that is going to happen. Those 2 are going to be done, worked on and developed as 2 on the end of the terrace. This is a nice little scheme. The officer's report really covers most of the matters. It is quite modest. It's basically 2 new houses and 2 bungalows. It's a variety of material. It's got stone in it. We're trying to use the material we've got on site as best we can from the little building we're demolishing. And you came out and looked at it. You had a site visit last time and you approved it, and it is identical. I'm sorry about the double yellow line business. That is a requirement from Lancashire County Council, and it's actually not the residents' bit. Crook's Garage are the biggest culprits for parking all over the shop at the entrance, which is immediately, if you're looking at the entrance of this site, it's immediately on your left. It's actually Crook's Garage who park loads of Land Rovers and things there and come and go a lot, rather than the residents. I think it's that Lancashire County Council are trying to stop with the double yellow lines. I don't think they're trying to stop the residents. They might not have a good effect on them, but I think it's Crook's Garage. Anyway, and so on the whole, I recommend it to you again, because I think it's a decent little scheme that would fit Hoghton okay, and we've got to do something with it because it's a mess. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Marwood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is a nice little development. I like it. I like the houses. I think they're in keeping. Got a bit of character about them. If the previous applicant had been anything like that, they might have got it. But anyway, I digress. The residence parking, well, that's up to LCC, and it is. They can apply for that. But we've approved this in the past. It's still a nice development, so I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to second it. And when I've been looking at the, the design of the houses, and when you think of the last application, this is the kind of thing that is not nice for a village, and to me it complements the area. And so I've no hesitation but to second it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm not going to debate the application again. We did it quite thoroughly last time around. I think we had a site visit as well. And I think the applicant actually tweaked the application at that stage as well. I really like the application. I think it's small scale, it's in character, and I'm more than happy to support it.
Councillor France.
Just quickly, Chair, I did go on the site visit as well, and yeah, I'm quite happy with this application.
Anybody else? Councillor
Very happy with this, Chair. Thank you.
So members have voted in favour of the recommendation. It remains that planning permission is approved, subject to conditions and a section 106. Okay.
Okay, item E and F are Roecroft Farm, Ulnes, Walton, pages 151 to 182 and 183 to 210. We'll just have one preamble and then separate votes on these because it's the same thing. Amy's going to present this item. The first one is planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and the second is the listed building consent is granted. I've no registered speakers, so Amy.
Thank you, Chair. So the application seek full planning permission and listed building consent for the redevelopment of the site, including the demolition and conversion of existing buildings to create 5 residential dwellings. There is an extant planning permission and listed building consent on this site for a similar development, but the current proposal seeks to change plots 5 and 6, which are located to the north of the site. Roecroft Farmhouse itself is Grade 2 listed, and some buildings on the site are also curtilage listed. The site constitutes previously developed land in the green belt, and therefore paragraph 145, exception G, is applicable. When considering the impact of the proposal on the openness of the green belt, the volume of the buildings proposed is approximately 18% larger than the existing situation, and the council considers that increases below an uplift of 30% are not materially larger. Plots 5 and 6 would be increased in height by approximately 2 metres, however it would not exceed the tallest building on site. When considering the spatial and visual aspects of openness and the context of the site, the officer report establishes that there would be no greater impact on the openness of the green belt than the existing development, and that the proposal would accord with paragraph 145G. The proposal is not therefore inappropriate development in the green belt. In heritage terms, as with the extant permissions and consent, there will be some very low level harm caused by aspects of the proposal upon the setting of the listed building. However, this harm is less than substantial, and there are a number of public benefits which outweigh this harm. The benefits include sustained and beneficial use of the group of traditional farm buildings, which would help retain the contribution made by the farm group to the significance of the Grade 2 listed Roecroft Farmhouse, including their long-term maintenance and upkeeping. The proposal remains acceptable in all other aspects, such as amenity design, nature conservation and highway safety. Each application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions.
Okay, over to you, members. Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any issue with this application, and I'm more happy to support it.
Okay. Councillor Sherwood.
Likewise, Chair.
Anybody else wish to comment? If not, well, can we take a vote on E on the planning permission that's required, please? Okay, Les?
Members have voted in favour of the officer's recommendation that planning permission is granted, subject to conditions.
Okay, and item 3F, listed building consent is granted, so we wish to want to vote on that, please. have voted. Jean. I think what happens is if you press at exactly the same time as somebody else, only one goes through. That's all I can think of, because it's a bit bizarre. Okay.
So members have voted in favour of officer recommendation in that it is recommended that listed building consent is granted subject to conditions.
Okay. So moving on to item 3G, the Nurseries, Southport Road, Eccleston, pages 211 to 228. Amy's going to present this item. The officer recommendation is listed there. I've no registered speakers. Amy, can you do it? Thank you.
So members should note that the applicant has appealed against the council's non-determination of the application. So the application site is located in the Greenbelt on the southern side of Southport Road, approximately 1.2 kilometres to the north of the settlement of Eccleston. The site is currently in horticultural use and is occupied by glasshouses. The area is characterised by Ribble development located either side of Southport Road in a mixture of residential, agricultural, horticultural and commercial uses. The application seeks permission in principle for the demolition of the existing glasshouses and the erection of up to 5 dwellings at the site. Members will be mindful that the considerations in the determination of a permission in principle application is restricted to location, land use and the amount of development. Technical matters such as highway safety, amenity and design can only be considered at the technical details consent stage. Neighbour objections have been received from the occupants of 5 addresses raising issues including harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, highway safety, lack of local amenities. Further details of these objections are provided in the committee report. Whilst the application site contains buildings in the form of glasshouses, these are in horticultural use and therefore the site does not meet the definition of land as set out at Annex 2 of the framework. Furthermore, the site is not located in an area specified for growth in the Central Lancashire Core Strategy, falling to be considered as another place. The supporting statement submitted with the application seeks to engage with paragraph 149E of the framework, the contention being that the development would represent limited infilling in a village, which is an exception to inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Policy 1F of the core strategy reflects this exception and allows for appropriate infilling in smaller villages and within substantially built up frontages. Policy HS7 sets out further criteria for infilling in villages. This raises the question of whether the site can be considered to be within a smaller village or a gap in a substantially built up frontage. The officer report goes into further detail about this matter and concludes that the site falls outside of the defined settlement of Eccleston and does not fall within a village for the purposes of the framework, and that the site is too wide to fall within the definition of infill development. The proposal is therefore considered to be inappropriate development within the Greenbelt and is not in accordance with the framework, Policy 1 of the Central Core Strategy and Policy HS7 of the Chorley Local Plan. As such, it is recommended to the Planning Committee that the Planning Committee be minded to resolve to refuse permission in principle with a minor update to the reason as follows. The proposed development would be located within the Greenbelt as defined by the Chorley Local Plan. The proposed development is not considered to represent limited infilling within a village and would be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and therefore harmful by definition. It is not considered that there are very special circumstances to overcome the definitional harm to the Greenbelt. The proposal is therefore contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework at Chapter 13, Policy 1F of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy and Policy HS7 of the Chorley Local Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you. Councillor Morwood.
Move the recommend... Oh, sorry.
Sorry? No, I missed what you said, Anne.
Well, almost the same. Yes, I am minded to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Beaver, Councillor Sherwood. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also minded to go along the officer's recommendation. It just seems to me that with this glass area, why am I thinking that later is going to come another application for some houses just behind it? I know it's irrelevant, but I've just got this feeling.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, I support the officer's recommendation. It's green belt, it's not infill. Wow, go along with that.
Okay, anybody else wish to comment? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Ooh, it all came up at once then. Liz?
Members have voted in favour of officer recommendation, and it's therefore recommended that the planning committee be minded to resolve to refuse permission.
Okay. Right. Moving swiftly on. Item 3H, Chorley and South Ribble Hospital, Preston Road, pages 229 to 250. Amy's going to present this item, and the recommendation is the application is approved subject to conditions. I've no registered speakers. Amy. Sorry? No, let's say we do it.
I've got to save time for you.
No, we've got to do it. We've got to do it.
The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a new two-storey hospital building to accommodate a 24-bed hospital ward and outpatient clinic. The application is part retrospective of the works has been commenced, and the building has been erected, although not complete. The site was formerly occupied by the hospital's maternity ward building, which was demolished in 2020 under a demolition consent. Since then, the site has been used as a temporary car park during other ongoing works at the wider site. The site is situated within the settlement of Chorley, where Policy 1 of the core strategy seeks to focus growth and investment. Core strategy policies 23 and 25 are supportive of the need to support healthcare infrastructure and to improve primary care access and facilities whilst making the most and effective use of hospital sites. The principle of this development is acceptable in planning policy terms. The building is modular construction of modern appearance, which would not appear incongruous in this location given the varying architectural styles across the hospital site, including more recent modern extensions. It is not considered that the proposal is harmful to the character and appearance of the area or a visually intrusive form of development from surrounding receptors. The nearest residential property from the development is located approximately 31 metres to the south, which is a sufficient distance to ensure that this neighbouring dwelling is not adversely affected by overbearing impacts, loss of light, loss of privacy or visual intrusion. In addition, it should also be noted that a building previously occupied this site until recently. Given the nature of the hospital site, associated parking and comings and goings of traffic and people, there would be an element of noise and disturbance. However, this is not a new situation and one which has to be expected of a well-established hospital site. In terms of parking, this is reviewed across the site as a whole, and Lancashire County Highways confirm that they are satisfied that the proposed development would not exacerbate any existing car parking issues. The development is therefore considered to be acceptable in highway safety terms. There would be no harm to nature conservation or flood risk over and above the existing situation. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions.
Okay, over to you. Councillor Hilton, Councillor Lowe, Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. This is great to see that Lancashire Teaching Hospitals are continuing to invest into Chorley Hospital. This is going to be a modern healthcare facility that will benefit patients, many of which will be residents of Chorley. This will improve working facilities for staff and allow them to deliver modern healthcare in a safe, effective environment. It will also make it a better place to work, and that will help with recruitment and retention of staff. I have absolutely no issue with this other than the fact it's retrospective, and I'm happy to move officer recommendations.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I have no problem in terms of seconding the recommendation. However, I think we need to send a message to Lancashire Teaching Hospital Trust that, if my memory serves me right, this is not the first time they have started construction within that curtilage of that site, and then applying for retrospective permission, which in effect draws members' arms behind our back in doing this. So I think we need to send a strong message. While we welcome the enhanced facilities or potential enhanced facilities within this site, is please do not take this authority for granted by starting the construction and then putting a retrospective application in. But I'm happy to second, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, I agree with what Councillor Lowe has just said. However, I'm delighted that our local hospital is being used and is there for we people of Chorley. It's you mentioned it's modular. Majority of hospitals have an eclectic mix of building designs. I can't see an issue there. I'm very happy for this to go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I echo what Councillor Lawes just said there. But what's amazing me is that nowhere in this does the word retrospective, so they're having another go at us. It's saying it doesn't matter what you want, this is what we're going to do, and they haven't even had the grace to put it in there. Sorry?
Okay, Councillor Marwood. I'm trying to move on. Go on.
How could I put it? It's quite interesting, really. It's on the same lines as we've been talking about. We're used to getting drawings or illustrations of what it might look like, and here we have photographs of, here it is. Can I just ask officers, did it actually have to get our permission then? Were they just so sure that it would go through? But did it actually have to come to this committee?
Adele.
Yeah, there are no permitted development rights, so it requires planning permission. But to be fair, there's no requirement to include retrospective in the description. And I think it was submitted quite a long time ago, this, and there's been quite a lot of discussion about the drainage rather than the principle. Right. And given that there would be a funding regime and a need to progress through a development programme, a commercial, in inverted commas, decision has been made to progress the development, knowing that in principle it was acceptable and they were trying to sort out the drainage. So I don't think they've gone ahead, without due regard. It was an informed decision to progress.
Members have voted in favour, so it's recommended that the application is approved, subject to conditions.
And last but not least, item 3I, land opposite Hampton Grove, Wigan Road, Clayton-Le-Woods, pages 251 to 268. Adele's going to present this item. It's recommended that permission in principle is granted, subject to conditions, and have no speakers. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission in principle for a minimum of 1 dwelling and a maximum of 4 dwellings on land opposite Hampton Grove in Clayton-Le-Woods. The application site is an open field located in the Greenbelt to the west side of Wigan Road. The scope of application seeking permission in principle is limited to location, land use and amount of development. Other matters should be considered as the technical details at the technical details consent stage, should permission in principle be granted. As such, matters relating to highway, safety, heritage, ecology, character and amenity impacts fall outside what the local planning authority can assess as part of this current application. Within Greenbelts, the framework and local plan allow for limited infilling in villages. In this instance, the site has been subject to a recent appeal decision to approve permission in principle, and it has therefore been established that the development of the site would represent limited infilling in the Greenbelt. The application site can readily accommodate up to 4 dwellings, and it should be noted that there is nothing within national or local policy that restricts the number of dwellings that can be considered acceptable in relation to limited infilling. Overall, the principle of erecting up to 4 dwellings at the application site is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan, and it is recommended that permission in principle is granted, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Over to you, members. Councillor Whittam.
Thank you, Chair. Just for information purposes, this site was previously built on with a site cabin for a large developer a few years ago. I believe afterwards they had to put a retrospective application in. So if that's used for leverage in future, it will be needs to be noted by members. But also on the map on there doesn't seem to be illustrated the pond that exists there. On Google Maps, there's definitely a pond there. So whilst I accept that it's only planning in principle, I would expect a decent ecology report to be forthcoming, although I'm not exactly against this. It meets all the infill criteria for Greenbelt. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to come back? And then it's Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, this is a new regime, if you like, in the planning process of permission in principle, and we previously resisted a permission in principle application on the basis that it didn't meet the relevant criteria, and that appeal was successful, and therefore that's what we're attaching significant weight to in this determination process. In terms of the events of the site cabin in relation to the housing development, that has no impact on this at all. It's not made it previously developed land in any way. It's still Greenbelt and it's not previously developed land. And in terms of the technical matters, as I said when I was presenting it, matters of detail such as ecological impacts would be subject to consideration at the technical matters stage in due course. So there will be need to look at the ecological impacts.
Okay. Councillor Boardman, then Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On a normal day, I would more than happily support an infill development, but I was happy to see that the planning officers did actually refuse the first application that came in, because I'm actually struggling to find any type of street scene or built-up frontage on this highway, which our policy is pretty clear. It is an infill site is a site that's large enough to take 1 or 2 dwellings with a clear built-up frontage, and it has none, as far as I can see. So, great that the applicants won on appeal, not quite sure how, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the technical matters of this one come forward, because how they're going to fit 4 across the front of that site, I'll never know. Thank you.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to clarify what Adele said. We're agreeing to this in principle. Does that mean that when we get the details in, we won't be able to do anything with it?
No, if you consider it in like an outline consent and a reserved matters consent scenario, permission in principle basically gives a green light to come forward with a detailed scheme. So you couldn't resist it on the basis that it's in the green belt because you've already accepted the development. And that decision effectively has been taken out of our hands, if you like, because of the appeal decision. Because the appeal inspector has concluded that permission in principle should be granted for residential development on this site. So the technical matters will come forward, and the technical matters will be the layout, the scale, the design, the landscaping, and we'll look at any other impacts in terms of highway safety impacts, ecological impacts, drainage impacts, flood risk assessments. That's the whole process. We have a permission in principle stage and we have the technical matters stage.
It gets curiouser and curiouser. The guy won an appeal without specifying what it was going to be there, which reduces our ability to determine in any meaningful way what comes along later. It seems that the whole shift of planning policy is going away from local determination to central determination. And I think that's to be regretted, Chair. I accept what Adele says, and I understand that, but I think it's a sad and a serious precedent that we've got to be careful with.
Clarify that on one of the diagrams that the red area will not be extended any further west when it comes to it.
It won't be extended any further left at the technical matter stage, but I haven't got a crystal ball and I don't know what's going to be submitted at some point in the future. This application for residential development only relates to the area within the red line plan.
Thank you. May I come back? The reason why I say that is that the pond that you mentioned is outside of this scope, but I can guess that one day it's going to go and come in. Thank you.
Yeah, the pond is definitely there. If you look at Google Maps, the photograph has been taken this year, and it's quite clearly visible on there. Although I accept that it's not visible on this particular diagram. And my concern was the robust ecology report for endangered species in that area, particularly. The area around it has all been built up. The Thorn Trees garage has been there a while, the co-op, various other businesses around it. But one of my concerns would be they don't use this as a precedent to sort of infill the rest of the green belt, moving north from that point. But hey, thank you.
Councillor Boardman.
Recommendations.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Can we move to the vote, please? I know, oh, it's there in my list. Right, Liz.
Members have voted that permission in principle is granted, subject to conditions.
Okay. Thank you. We're almost there. Item 5, the appeals report, pages 269 to 272. Adele.
Thanks, Chair. I'll make this very quick. I'm mindful of the time. It's been some time since any appeals were reported, hence why there's more than you would normally see. There's been a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the decisions, and to my mind, some very similar proposals have been approved and dismissed. I'm not quite sure what the logic is with those and what the differences were. And in terms of the new appeals, we've received their detail there in the Spinners Close appeal and one in Clayton-Le-Woods and the Stump Lane one, which was an advert one. I don't think there's anything of any particular significance that I want to draw to your attention. Everything's detailed there. If anybody does have any questions or want to have sight of the actual detailed decision letters, then just let me know and they can be provided. Thank you.
Okay, I have no urgent business, so that's the end of the meeting. Thank you. Thanks to everybody and safe journey home. The meeting's closed.